This episode is brought to you by LifeLock. The holidays mean more travel, more shopping, more time online, and more personal info in places that could expose you to identity theft. That's why LifeLock monitors millions of data points every second. If your identity is stolen, their US-based restoration specialist will fix it, guaranteed or your money back. Get more holiday fun and less holiday worry with LifeLock. Save up to 40% your first year. Visit LifeLock.com/podcast. Terms apply.
With us this morning is Victoria Coates. Under the Trump administration, she was Deputy National Security Director, I believe that. Victoria, tell us what's going on in the world.
Well, good morning, John. There are a series of interesting developments. I think we have to keep an eye on this Azerbaijan Airways plane that was apparently downed by a Russian missile flying from Baku into Russia. And the Russians that was probably a mistake. It was an area where the Russians claim there are Ukrainian drones operating, but they didn't close the space to commercial aircraft. And so this plane just flew in. And it's created, a big firestorm in the region. The crew apparently behaved heroically and were able to save about half of the passengers. But it was, it is an egregious breach of, every flight protocol by Russia. So keep a close eye on that.
Well, so many things are happening. People are asking me before when I was on European television last week about President Trump. And I said, under President Trump, 2017 to 2021, we had no wars. We had no wars. We got skirmishes all over the world right now. Besides problems in the Panama Canal, besides problems in the Suez Canal, we got the Ukraine, we got Afghanistan. I want to know, in Afghanistan, the women are being abused. The women are not free to go get an education. Where are all the women's groups around the country?
No, there's absolutely no outcry about it. And it's why the situation in Azerbaijan is so dangerous, because we're just kind of drifting potentially toward the conflict. And as you said, under President Trump, with very strong leadership out of Washington, that didn't happen. And Afghanistan is all the more egregious, John, because we're funding it. Secretary Blinken testified 2 weeks ago that, yes, some of the money that we, millions upon millions of taxpayer dollars that we give to various United Nations organizations for humanitarian work in Afghanistan, you want that to go to the girls, you want that to go to education. But he testified, yes, some of that gets siphoned off by the Taliban. And the congressman who was interrogating him was saying, even a penny is too much. Blinken seemed to think that was acceptable risk for doing business. And so we're funding these people as they repress the Afghan people very, very brutally. And it's outrageous.
And where's the environmentalists when they tried to sink that Greek tanker in the Red Sea? It doesn't pass the smell test. Something is wrong in the world that, it's always Trump's fault and nobody else's.
Well, it is. And the one other story that I think nobody's tracking, which has the potential to get really hot over the next couple of weeks, is what's going on in Iran. And Iran is should be one of the world's great energy producing nations. They have so mismanaged both their environment and their infrastructure that more than 10% of their electricity generating plants have gone offline because there's no gas. And people are being told not to heat their homes. It's like Jimmy Carter saying, put on a sweater, but 100 times worse. And so there's a lot of unrest in Iran. President Trump has been speaking very powerfully about Iran, about his intentions for that regime. So I think that is a story that's going to burble up to the surface, I would say, right after the first of the year.
Understood. Tell us, why did President Biden give another $10 billion to Iran a couple weeks ago?
Oh, he does it repeatedly. This is a mechanism by which they allow the Iraqis to buy electricity from the Iranians. It's what's been kind of keeping the Ponzi scheme of the Iranian energy system afloat. But those, of course, are American dollars that continue to flow into Iraq. That's what the government of Iraq uses to pay Iran for this. So that is
Victoria, I was going to just joke around and say, were they short on making payroll to the Houthis and the Hamases?
Well, they are. And so they were under President Trump, and that's why we didn't have the kinds of terrorist attacks that you've seen under Biden, because they flipped those switches immediately. It's one of the first things they did when they came into office. They took the Houthi off the foreign terrorist organization list to make it easier for Iran to pay them. So yes, that is what is going to happen, though, under President Trump, when he puts maximum pressure back on them, when he stops allowing them to sell 1.75 million barrels a day of cheap oil to China, and really takes very strong steps, I think, in concert with our Israeli allies, to prevent them from getting a nuclear weapon, which is his stated top goal.
Victoria, this is Curtis Sliwa. The slaughter in the Ukraine continues, both Russians and Ukrainians being slaughtered. I mean, every day. Putin didn't even observe Christmas. Even in World War I, both sides with their slaughter ceased any conflict on that day. What can Trump do to bring this conflict to an end? Because it seems Putin knows he can grind down the Ukraine because of his overwhelming human resource versus the Ukrainians' limited human resource.
Well, good morning, Curtis. Yeah, I mean, that's been the problem with Ukraine from the get-go. When the Ukrainians actually fought back, it's, obviously yet another massive intel failure under Biden, that the prediction was it was going to be a 3-day war. It wasn't, and they never pivoted. They never changed policies. They just sort of kept dribbling and drabbling out now close to $200 billion in U.S. taxpayer assistance to this war, but without a strategy to win it. And in that case, you're 100% correct. The numbers are going to favor Putin. He's going to just keep throwing bodies at this. Now, it's not going great for him. He's had to recruit some North Koreans, which is pretty dicey. He has an incident like this downed airliner, which is very bad for public relations. He has some real bad domestic economic problems as well. So things are not great for him. So my expectation is, President Trump has said repeatedly, we want to end the killing. It is just, such a destructive, expensive, pointless in many ways war. So I think he will see having leverage on both sides. He said he's not going to summarily cut off aid to Ukraine, but at the same time, he wants a thorough accounting of what's going, and why. Why are we funding all sorts of civil society programs that should be funded by Brussels? But he'll have pressure on Putin as well. And so I think his goal is then to get this to, a satisfactory resolution that does not encourage Putin to do it again.
Does Zelensky realize he's just got to basically forfeit the lands that Russia already has because his back is against the wall?
I think there is a reality that does seem to be sinking in. I've heard from President Zelensky a much greater willingness to talk and negotiate, specifically what those boundaries look like. That there's no point in our speculating the details of it from here, but I think, yes, there's going to have to be some kind of an agreement. And the key is to not make it so overwhelmingly positive for Russia that Putin takes this as a license to go forward. And that's why I think having a president like President Trump, who will be able to exert pressure on him, is critical.
I do appreciate it, Victoria Coach. Thanks for joining us again and giving us a geopolitical overview right as we await 2 o'clock on January 20th, the transition of power to a new Trump administration.
We need President Trump to save the free world besides saving America.
Absolutely. And we'll look forward to a much happier new year.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Happy New Year, Victoria.